Henry III's early days. Henry III of England, who reigned from 1216 to 1272, occupies a pivotal position in English history. His long and eventful reign was characterized by significant challenges, including a tumultuous minority, internal conflicts, and the Barons' War. Nevertheless, it was also a period marked by substantial developments in governance and the consolidation of royal authority. Let's explore Henry's background, early life, his minority, and early reign. Background. Henry III was born on October 1, 1207, at Winchester Castle to King John of England and Isabella of Angoulême. His birth placed him in the line of two influential dynasties, the Normans and Angevins, whose intertwined histories defined much of medieval Europe. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 had established a legacy of centralized authority, while the Angevin Empire extended England's influence across vast swathes of France. Henry inherited this complex legacy of consolidation and conflict, which would shape the challenges of his reign. King John's rule had been fraught with tension and failure. His controversial policies, including heavy taxation and the arbitrary confiscation of lands, alienated many of his barons and undermined the monarchy's credibility. This hostility culminated in the signing of the Magna Carta in 1215, a document that sought to limit royal authority and safeguard baronial rights. However, John's subsequent rejection of its terms plunged England into the First Barons' War, a civil conflict that left the kingdom deeply fractured and vulnerable to external threats. Isabella of Angoulême, Henry's mother, added further complexity to his inheritance. Her marriage to John in 1200 had been politically motivated, designed to secure John's control over the Angoulême region in France. However, John's loss of Normandy in 1204 and his deteriorating relations with the French crown diminished the strategic significance of this alliance. Isabella's strong-willed nature and ambitious pursuits earned her both admirers and detractors. After John's death in 1216, she returned to France and married Hugh X of Lusignan, creating a new power base that occasionally intersected with English affairs. Her departure from England left young Henry without a maternal figure at court, further complicating his upbringing. The political and military instability of John's reign profoundly shaped Henry's early life. John's excommunication by Pope Innocent III in 1209 had left the kingdom in spiritual crisis, alienating the clergy and weakening the crown's moral authority. His military defeats, particularly at the hands of King Philip II of France, further eroded his reputation and cost England key territories in France. By the time of John's death in October 1216, England was on the verge of collapse. Prince Louis of France controlled much of the kingdom, and many English barons supported his claim to the throne, casting doubt on Henry's succession. At just 9 years old, Henry ascended to the throne under precarious circumstances. His coronation at Gloucester Cathedral on October 28, 1216, was hastily arranged to secure his legitimacy. The use of a simple gold circlet as a crown, due to the royal regalia being in enemy hands, symbolized the fragility of his position. Despite these challenges, Henry's youth and innocence proved advantageous. His supporters, led by William Marshal, the Earl of Pembroke, portrayed him as a symbol of renewal and unity, contrasting sharply with the controversial legacy of his father. The early support for Henry's reign was rooted in the loyalty of key figures like Marshal, who assumed the role of regent and worked tirelessly to stabilize the kingdom. Marshal's military prowess and diplomatic acumen were instrumental in rallying support for the young king. Under his leadership, the royalist forces achieved critical victories, including the Battle of Lincoln in 1217, which marked a turning point in the First Barons' War. The subsequent Treaty of Lambeth in September 1217 formalized peace and ensured Henry's position on the throne. The broader context of Henry's inheritance was one of political fragmentation and uncertainty. England's relations with neighboring powers were strained, with Scotland and Wales posing ongoing threats to the kingdom's stability. Domestically, the barons remained divided, with some continuing to resist royal authority even after the resolution of the First Barons' War. These divisions underscored the challenges Henry would face in asserting his authority and governing effectively. Henry's childhood was marked by the efforts of his regents to safeguard the monarchy while preparing him for kingship. His education emphasized governance, military strategy, and theology, reflecting the multifaceted responsibilities of a medieval ruler. The regents also sought to cultivate alliances with the Church, recognizing its crucial role in legitimizing Henry's rule. Pope Honorius III's strong support for Henry provided a spiritual foundation for his reign, helping to dissuade potential challengers and reinforce the monarchy's divine authority. By the time Henry reached maturity, he had witnessed the complexities of governance during one of the most turbulent periods in English history. The legacy of his father's failures, combined with the precarious circumstances of his minority, shaped his understanding of kingship and the delicate balance between royal prerogative and baronial cooperation. These formative experiences laid the groundwork for the challenges and achievements that would define his reign. Early life and challenges. The minority, 1216 to 1226. Henry's early reign was dominated by the efforts of his regents to stabilize the kingdom during a time of significant upheaval. Chief among these was William Marshal, the Earl of Pembroke, a seasoned warrior and statesman whose leadership proved instrumental in securing Henry's throne. Marshal, renowned for his loyalty and strategic acumen, took on the role of regent and effectively governed in Henry's name during the early years of his minority. He faced the daunting task of restoring royal authority in a kingdom fractured by rebellion and foreign invasion. One of Marshal's most significant contributions was the reissuance of the Magna Carta in 1216 and again in 1217. These revised versions of the Charter omitted the most contentious clauses that had previously incited conflict between the monarchy and the barons, such as the security clause that allowed barons to enforce the agreement by force. Instead, Marshal focused on provisions that addressed grievances related to feudal rights and royal abuses of power. This strategic compromise reassured moderate barons while preserving the monarchy's authority, laying a foundation for the kingdom's recovery. The military campaigns of this period were equally crucial in securing Henry's reign. The Battle of Lincoln in May 1217, often referred to as a Lincoln Fair, marked a decisive victory for the royalist forces against the rebel barons and their French allies. Marshal's forces, bolstered by loyal knights and regional levies, successfully lifted the siege of Lincoln Castle, routing the opposition and capturing key rebel leaders. This triumph not only bolstered the morale of Henry's supporters but also underscored the regent's ability to command loyalty and inspire confidence in the monarchy's future. Following the victory at Lincoln, the naval Battle of Sandwich in August 1217 further consolidated the royalist position. Led by Hubert de Burgh, the English fleet intercepted and defeated a French convoy attempting to bring reinforcements to Prince Louis. The capture of the French flagship and the death of prominent French commanders dealt a severe blow to Louis's campaign. These victories forced Louis to abandon his claim to the English throne, culminating in the Treaty of Lambeth in September 1217. This agreement formally ended the First Barons' War and secured Henry's position as king, providing a much-needed period of peace and stability. The death of William Marshal in 1219 marked a turning point in Henry's early reign. With Marshal's passing, the responsibility of governance shifted to Hubert de Burgh, who emerged as a dominant figure in the Regency Council. De Burgh's tenure as justiciar was characterized by efforts to strengthen royal administration and reinforce the kingdom's defences. Recognizing the vulnerability of England's coastline, he implemented measures to fortify key ports and castles, ensuring the monarchy's territorial integrity. De Burgh also sought to curb corruption within the royal administration, instituting reforms to improve the efficiency of tax collection and judicial processes. However, de Burgh's centralization of power and perceived favoritism occasionally provoked tensions among the barons. His preference for rewarding loyalists with key positions and land grants alienated some factions, creating friction within the Regency Council. These internal conflicts foreshadowed the broader challenges Henry would face as he sought to assert his authority in the years to come. Despite these tensions, de Barre's efforts laid the groundwork for a more stable and effective royal government, enabling Henry to transition from a vulnerable monarch to a more assertive ruler as he came of age. During this period, Henry's education and personal development were carefully overseen by his regents and advisors. He received instruction in governance, law, and military strategy, equipping him with the skills necessary to navigate the complexities of kingship. His upbringing also emphasized his role as a divinely appointed ruler, fostering a strong sense of personal piety that would later influence his approach to governance. Henry's exposure to the challenges of leadership during his minority instilled in him a deep understanding of the importance of compromise and collaboration, lessons that would resonate throughout his reign. Henry's minority was also a time of significant diplomatic activity. The regents worked to repair relations with neighboring powers, including Scotland and Wales, through treaties and strategic marriages. These efforts were aimed at reducing external threats and fostering a more stable geopolitical environment. Additionally, the regents cultivated a close alliance with the papacy, which played a crucial role in legitimizing Henry's rule. Pope Honorius III's unwavering support for Henry helped to dissuade opposition and reinforce the monarchy's spiritual authority. Henry's education and upbringing were carefully managed to prepare him for the responsibilities of kingship. He was tutored in governance, military strategy, and theology, instilling in him a strong sense of personal piety and an appreciation for the intricacies of medieval politics. The regents emphasized the importance of kingship as a divinely ordained role, fostering Henry's belief in the sacred nature of his authority. Despite the successes of the Regency, Henry's minority was not without its challenges. The financial strain of maintaining royal authority, coupled with lingering baronial discontent, underscored the fragility of the monarchy. The regents faced periodic unrest from factions dissatisfied with their policies, as well as external threats from Scotland and Wales, which required constant vigilance and strategic diplomacy. By the time Henry was declared of age in 1227, the efforts of the Regency had laid a solid foundation for his reign. The resolution of the First Barons' War, the restoration of royal finances, and the consolidation of authority within the kingdom ensured that Henry inherited a more stable realm. However, the challenges of his minority highlighted the ongoing need for compromise and reform, lessons that would influence his approach to governance in the years to come. In sum, Henry's early life and the efforts of his regents to stabilize the kingdom during his minority were critical in shaping the trajectory of his reign. The strategic leadership of figures like William Marshal and Hubert de Burgh, combined with decisive military victories and pragmatic governance, ensured the monarchy's survival during one of the most precarious periods in English history. These formative years not only secured Henry's throne but also laid the foundation for the challenges and achievements that would define his long and eventful reign. Henry III's early reign, advisors' influence, conflicts with France, and internal political struggles. Henry officially assumed control of his government in January 1227, although debates persisted about whether he should be considered a minor until his 21st birthday in 1228. His early reign presented significant challenges, encompassing the influence of advisors on policymaking, prolonged conflicts with France over ancestral territories, and internal political struggles that tested the stability of his rule. The role of advisors and governance in Henry's early reign. At the start of Henry III's reign, England was recovering from the tumultuous period of his father, King John, and the subsequent Regency. Hubert de Burgh, who had played a crucial role in protecting Henry's throne during his minority, emerged as a dominant figure in his government. Rewarded generously for his loyalty, Hubert received substantial estates and was appointed justiciar for life. His position allowed him to exercise considerable influence over Henry's early governance. Hubert's administration focused on stabilizing the kingdom and consolidating royal authority. He implemented reforms to strengthen governance and sought to bring rebellious barons under control. Hubert's policies aimed to reinforce the power of the monarchy, improve the administration of justice, and secure revenues necessary for effective governance. However, his growing wealth and power led to resentment among rival factions within the royal court. These rivalries set the stage for political disputes that would later undermine his position and contribute to his eventual downfall. Hubert's dominance in court also reflected the broader dynamics of royal governance in medieval England, where the monarch often relied on powerful individuals to implement their authority. His reforms, though aimed at strengthening royal control, inadvertently alienated other key figures within the nobility, fostering distrust and resentment that weakened the cohesion of Henry's administration. Conflicts with France, the struggle for ancestral lands. A central issue during Henry's early reign was the loss of English territories in France. The catastrophic military failures of King John had resulted in the forfeiture of Normandy and other key regions to Philip II of France in 1204. Determined to reclaim these lands, Henry faced formidable challenges. By 1221, the French crown's income had nearly doubled, providing it with superior financial and military resources compared to England. This economic disparity placed Henry at a disadvantage as he sought to recover the family's ancestral lands. The death of Louis VIII in 1226 created an opening for Henry to reassert English claims. The new French king, 12-year-old Louis IX, faced significant internal opposition, including revolts among the nobility. Encouraged by his advisors, Henry launched a military campaign in France in 1230. However, poor strategic planning, logistical failures, and a lack of local support rendered the campaign unsuccessful. The costly expedition ended with a truce that lasted until 1234, leaving Henry unable to achieve his objectives. Henry's ambitions in France were further hindered by England's limited financial resources and the divided loyalties of the Anglo-Norman aristocracy. Many of the barons who held estates in both England and France were reluctant to support a prolonged conflict, fearing the loss of their lands or alliances. This divided support not only weakened Henry's campaigns but also underscored the complexity of English-French relations during this period. Internal political struggles, the fall of Hubert de Burgh. Hubert de Burgh's prominence in Henry's government eventually became a liability. His accumulation of power and wealth alienated many influential barons, who saw him as a threat to their own influence. In 1232, Hubert was ousted from power and replaced by Peter de Roche, a former Bishop of Winchester. De Roche adopted a more confrontational style of governance, seizing estates from political opponents and consolidating his faction's authority. Peter de Roche's aggressive policies provoked widespread discontent. The arbitrary seizure of estates and the favoritism shown to his allies exacerbated tensions within the nobility. This aggressive consolidation of power culminated in a civil conflict led by Richard Marshal, one of England's most powerful barons. The rebellion exposed deep divisions within the kingdom and highlighted the fragility of Henry's authority. It also revealed the risks inherent in relying on divisive advisors, whose actions could destabilize the broader political structure. Archbishop Edmund of Abingdon intervened in 1234 to broker a peace agreement. As part of the settlement, Peter de Roche was dismissed, and Henry pledged to govern in a more conciliatory manner. This episode underscored the delicate balance of power between the monarchy, the nobility, and the church, all of which played critical roles in the governance of medieval England. The dismissal of de Roche marked a turning point in Henry's reign, as he sought to chart a new course of governance free from the dominance of a single minister. Personal rule and its challenges. After the removal of Peter de Roche, Henry III resolved to rule personally, without relying on a dominant minister. This period of personal governance, which lasted for 24 years, was characterized by efforts to reinforce royal authority and navigate the kingdom's persistent challenges. Despite Henry's attempts to assert control, his reign continued to be shaped by external and internal pressures. Henry's personal rule required him to engage directly with the complex network of baronial interests and local governance structures. This hands-on approach presented opportunities for the king to strengthen his authority, but it also exposed him to the challenges of balancing competing interests. The lack of a trusted, unifying advisor meant that Henry had to navigate the political landscape more independently, relying on his own judgment to address disputes and crises. The loss of Brittany to Louis IX in November 1234 demonstrated the ongoing difficulties Henry faced in reclaiming ancestral territories. Nevertheless, he remained committed to restoring England's influence in France, a goal that shaped much of his foreign policy. Henry's efforts to bolster his position often involved diplomatic maneuvers, including marriage alliances and negotiations with other European powers. These efforts, though sometimes successful, were not enough to offset the kingdom's military and economic disadvantages. Meanwhile, the internal struggles of his early reign laid the groundwork for enduring tensions between the monarchy and the nobility. These tensions were exacerbated by the financial demands of war and the need for royal revenues, which often required concessions from the barons. The evolving relationship between the crown and the nobility during this period would have lasting implications for the development of English governance. Conclusion. Henry III's early reign encapsulates the complexities of medieval English governance. Influenced by powerful advisors, burdened by the challenges of reclaiming lost territories in France, and marked by political discord within his kingdom, Henry's rule set the tone for future developments in English politics. While his decision to govern personally brought a degree of stability, the challenges he faced underscored the inherent difficulties of maintaining royal authority during a period of significant change. These experiences would leave a lasting imprint on Henry's legacy and the evolution of the English monarchy. By examining the multifaceted challenges of his reign, from the influence of advisors like Hubert de Burgh and Peter de Roche to the broader geopolitical struggles with France, we gain a deeper understanding of the medieval monarchy's complexities. Henry's reign serves as a case study in the interplay between personal ambition, institutional constraints, and the unpredictable dynamics of medieval politics. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious. Henry III's early reign, governance, reforms, religious devotion, and policies towards Jews in England. Henry III, 1216 to 1272, exemplifies the intricate challenges of medieval kingship, as his reign oscillated between efforts to reinforce monarchical authority and adherence to constitutional limitations. His approach to governance, patronage of cultural and architectural advancements, deep religious commitment, and contentious policies towards Jews reveal a ruler attempting to balance tradition, innovation, and political necessity. Let's explore these dimensions of his reign, providing insight into his influence on England's political, social, and cultural trajectory. Centralization of royal power. Henry III sought to consolidate royal authority by reducing the influence of traditional state offices and establishing a streamlined royal council. This approach allowed for more direct control over governance but frequently clashed with the barons' entrenched privileges. While Henry's administration emphasized royal prerogative, he remained bound by constitutional constraints, particularly the Magna Carta, which was repeatedly reaffirmed during his reign. These reaffirmations reflected his need to secure baronial and popular support while navigating the limitations imposed by the charters. The Provisions of Oxford, 1258, marked a turning point in Henry's reign, as baronial discontent culminated in reforms that sought to curtail royal authority through the establishment of a council to oversee governance. Although Henry initially accepted these terms, his later attempts to circumvent them led to the Second Barons' War. The conflict reached a climax at the Battle of Lewes in 1264, where Henry was captured. Simon de Montfort, the leader of the barons, temporarily implemented a form of constitutional monarchy that included representatives from counties and boroughs, a significant step towards parliamentary governance. Following his son Edward's victory at the Battle of Evesham in 1265, royal authority was restored, but the foundations for England's evolving political system had been irrevocably laid. Henry's judicial and military reforms further highlight his efforts to centralize power. By appointing royal justices to oversee local courts, he aimed to standardize legal practices, reduce corruption, and enhance royal influence. However, these initiatives often alienated local elites accustomed to judicial autonomy. Similarly, his attempts to professionalize the military by establishing permanent garrisons and logistical frameworks faced significant obstacles, including financial constraints and the inefficiencies of the feudal system. Additionally, Henry attempted to expand the scope of royal taxation, leveraging the growing economic activities in urban centers to enhance revenue streams. Architectural and artistic patronage. Henry III's reign is renowned for its cultural and architectural legacy, particularly his ambitious reconstruction of Westminster Abbey. Inspired by the French Gothic style, the project reflected his desire to position England as a center of religious and artistic excellence. The Abbey's redesign incorporated a shrine to Edward the Confessor, linking Henry's rule to the legacy of the revered Anglo-Saxon king and reinforcing the divine legitimacy of his monarchy. Henry's architectural investments extended beyond Westminster Abbey. He allocated substantial resources to the fortification of royal castles, including the Tower of London, ensuring both their defensive utility and their symbolic role as manifestations of royal power. These projects were complemented by his patronage of the visual arts, which included commissioning illuminated manuscripts, religious sculptures, and intricate paintings. The Westminster Psalter, a richly decorated manuscript, epitomizes his blending of piety and royal propaganda. This era of artistic flourishing also benefited from the integration of European artisans into England's cultural landscape. Craftsmen from France and Italy introduced innovative techniques, fostering an architectural synthesis that blended traditional English styles with continental influences. Henry's patronage thus not only enhanced his personal prestige but also contributed to the broader cultural enrichment of medieval England. The impact of Henry's architectural and artistic endeavors also extended into the realm of education and intellectual development. His support for universities and monastic schools fostered an environment where theology, philosophy, and the arts could thrive. This period saw an increased production of religious manuscripts and translations, reflecting the interplay between artistic expression and scholarly pursuits. Monetary reforms. Economic stability was a priority for Henry III, as demonstrated by his efforts to reform England's coinage. In 1247, he introduced the long cross silver penny, designed to deter counterfeiting and improve the reliability of currency. The coin's distinctive design, featuring a cross that extended to the edges, made it more challenging to clip, a common form of fraud in medieval economies. Henry's attempt to introduce gold pennies represented an even more ambitious endeavor. While gold coinage was gaining traction in Mediterranean economies, its implementation in England faced practical challenges, including high production costs and limited acceptance among merchants. Ultimately, the initiative was abandoned, but it underscored Henry's recognition of the importance of aligning England's monetary system with broader European trends. These monetary reforms had significant implications for trade, both domestically and internationally. By enhancing the stability of England's currency, Henry facilitated commerce with key trading partners in Flanders, France, and the German principalities. Although the reforms were not without difficulties, they laid the groundwork for subsequent developments in England's financial infrastructure. The increased reliability of the coinage also contributed to the expansion of market towns and facilitated the growth of the merchant class. Religious devotion and policy. Henry III's profound religious devotion permeated his reign. A daily participant in Mass and a patron of numerous monastic institutions, he viewed his role as king as inherently tied to the divine order. This devotion was evident in his architectural projects, his collection of holy relics, and his public displays of piety. Westminster Abbey, reimagined as a spiritual and national landmark, symbolized Henry's commitment to religious expression. The inclusion of relics such as a fragment of the True Cross further elevated the abbey's status as a center of worship and pilgrimage. Beyond architecture, Henry supported the establishment of schools and universities, recognizing the value of education in advancing Christian scholarship and administrative efficiency. Henry's relationship with the papacy was another defining feature of his religious policy. While his alignment with papal interests bolstered his legitimacy, it also strained relations with domestic clergy and nobility, particularly when papal demands for financial contributions conflicted with local priorities. Nevertheless, Henry's patronage of religious scholars and his incorporation of canon law into secular governance reflected his commitment to integrating spiritual principles into the administration of the kingdom. Additionally, Henry's policies fostered the growth of ecclesiastical infrastructure across England. New churches, abbeys, and convents were established, providing spiritual support and serving as centers for community life. These developments reinforced the centrality of religion in daily life while also strengthening the Church's political and economic influence. Policies towards Jews. Henry III's policies towards Jews underwent a marked shift during his reign, transitioning from protection to persecution. Initially, he viewed Jewish communities as valuable economic assets, deriving significant revenue from their taxation. However, as financial pressures mounted, he imposed increasingly onerous taxes and restrictions, contributing to the economic marginalization of Jews. The Statute of Jewry, 1253, institutionalized anti-Semitic practices, mandating the wearing of identifying badges and restricting synagogue construction. These measures reflected broader societal prejudices and reinforced the segregation of Jewish populations. While partially motivated by fiscal considerations, these policies were also informed by religious ideology, as Henry sought to align his governance with prevailing Christian norms. The repercussions of Henry's policies extended beyond the Jewish community, as the economic decline of this group weakened the broader financial stability of the kingdom. Additionally, the institutionalized discrimination established a precedent for subsequent monarchs, culminating in the expulsion of Jews from England under Edward I in 1290. These policies also disrupted local economies, as Jewish financiers and merchants had played pivotal roles in facilitating trade and investment. Parliamentary developments. Henry III's reign witnessed significant advancements in the development of parliamentary governance. Initially convened to secure approval for taxation, these assemblies gradually expanded to include representatives from counties and boroughs, reflecting a broader base of political participation. The inclusion of knights and burgesses marked a turning point in England's political evolution, as it laid the groundwork for the emergence of the House of Commons. While these early parliaments primarily served the king's fiscal needs, they also provided a platform for addressing grievances and negotiating policy, fostering a nascent culture of accountability and representation. Over time, the procedural developments during Henry's reign contributed to the evolution of Parliament as a cornerstone of English governance. Cultural and social transformations. The social and cultural landscape of England evolved considerably during Henry III's reign. Agricultural advancements, including the adoption of new crop rotation techniques, contributed to increased productivity and population growth. Simultaneously, the expansion of urban centers and the rise of merchant guilds signaled a shift towards a more diversified economy. Cultural exchanges with continental Europe enriched England's artistic and intellectual traditions. The influence of French literature and courtly ideals permeated English society, while innovations in architecture and craftsmanship reflected the dynamic interplay between local and foreign elements. These transformations underscored the interconnectedness of medieval Europe and the gradual emergence of a more cosmopolitan English identity. Educational reforms also played a significant role in shaping the era's intellectual climate. Henry's patronage of universities and monastic schools fostered the development of a learned elite capable of addressing the administrative and spiritual needs of the kingdom. This emphasis on education contributed to the growth of a bureaucracy that would underpin governance in subsequent centuries. Legacy. Henry III's reign was marked by both achievements and challenges, reflecting the complexities of medieval kingship. His architectural and cultural contributions left an indelible mark on England's heritage, while his governance reforms laid the foundation for the constitutional development of later centuries. However, his financial mismanagement, contentious policies, and reliance on papal support often alienated key stakeholders, limiting the effectiveness of his rule. Despite these shortcomings, Henry's reign represents a pivotal period in English history. By navigating the tensions between tradition and innovation, he helped shape the political, social, and cultural contours of a kingdom transitioning towards a more modern era. His legacy endures in the structures he built, the reforms he initiated, and the challenges he faced in uniting a diverse and evolving society. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious. The 1265 Parliament of Simon de Montfort, a cornerstone of democratic evolution. The year 1265 marks a pivotal chapter in the annals of governance, symbolized by the innovative parliament convened by Simon de Montfort. This assembly, often hailed as an early precursor to modern parliamentary democracy, redefined power dynamics by expanding representation beyond the aristocracy. By exploring its historical context, composition, outcomes, and lasting impact, we can appreciate the transformative leadership of Simon de Montfort and the enduring significance of this groundbreaking event. This parliament not only shaped the political landscape of medieval England but also inspired the foundational principles of representative governance that resonate globally today. Historical context: catalysts for change. The 13th century was a period of mounting dissatisfaction with England's monarchical governance. King Henry III's reign, 1216 to 1272, faced widespread criticism for mismanagement, financial instability, and favoritism toward foreign courtiers. These grievances led to the Provisions of Oxford, 1258, and the Provisions of Westminster, 1259, which sought to impose checks on royal authority. Despite these reforms, tensions between the monarchy and its subjects persisted, creating fertile ground for a seismic shift in governance. Simon de Montfort, Earl of Leicester, emerged as a leading reformer. Once a trusted ally of the king, de Montfort became a staunch critic of royal overreach, advocating for a governance structure that balanced royal power with broader accountability. His ability to galvanize support from barons, knights, and urban elites demonstrated his political acumen and underscored the growing desire for a more inclusive system of governance. His leadership transcended the immediate concerns of his era, embodying a vision of equitable governance that foreshadowed later democratic ideals. Economic grievances further fueled demands for reform. Knights and burgesses, representing counties and towns, sought representation to address issues such as taxation and legal fairness. This push for inclusion highlighted the evolving relationship between the monarchy and its subjects, setting the stage for de Montfort's bold experiment in participatory governance. By tapping into these broader societal currents, de Montfort positioned himself as a leader who not only challenged the excesses of royal authority but also sought to redefine the boundaries of political engagement. Structure and purpose of the 1265 Parliament. De Montfort's Parliament, convened in January 1265, was revolutionary in its inclusivity. Departing from the norm of assemblies dominated by clergy and barons, de Montfort extended invitations to knights of the shire and burgesses, ensuring representation from counties and towns. This reimagined parliament symbolized a progressive step toward shared governance and acknowledged the voices of previously marginalized groups. De Montfort's objectives were multifaceted. Strategically, he sought to consolidate support against royalist forces led by Prince Edward, the king's heir. Ideologically, he aimed to institutionalize reforms that would ensure accountability and equitable power distribution. This parliament's composition underscored a recognition of the importance of diverse perspectives in addressing national challenges. By including non-aristocratic representatives, de Montfort fundamentally altered the nature of governance, setting a precedent for future assemblies. The agenda of the 1265 Parliament reflected both immediate and long-term concerns. Debate centered on military strategy, taxation, and the implementation of the Provisions of Oxford. By fostering collaboration among disparate factions, de Montfort demonstrated his commitment to building a consensus-driven approach to governance. This inclusivity set a precedent for future assemblies, emphasizing the integration of local and national priorities. The assembly also served as a platform for addressing the grievances of a society undergoing significant economic and social transformation, reinforcing the need for adaptable governance structures. Immediate outcomes and short-term repercussions. The 1265 Parliament marked a significant step in the evolution of representative governance. By including knights and burgesses, it institutionalized the principle that governance should involve input from a broader cross-section of society. This inclusivity not only strengthened de Montfort's political position but also challenged the exclusivity of aristocratic dominance in decision-making. However, de Montfort's ascendancy was short-lived. In August 1265, he was defeated and killed at the Battle of Evesham by royalist forces under Prince Edward. This decisive victory marked the collapse of de Montfort's political ambitions and the reversal of many of his reforms. Nonetheless, the principles established during his parliament, particularly the inclusion of commoners in governance, left an indelible mark on England's political development. Despite his defeat, de Montfort's legacy endured. The 1265 Parliament demonstrated the viability of a more inclusive approach to governance, inspiring subsequent reform efforts. It also highlighted the challenges inherent in balancing progressive change with entrenched power structures, offering lessons for future generations of reformers. The resilience of the ideas de Montfort championed underscores their transformative potential, even in the face of immediate setbacks. Long-term impact and legacy. The 1265 Parliament's most enduring legacy lies in its role as a foundational moment in the development of democratic governance. By extending representation to commoners, it challenged traditional power hierarchies and emphasized the importance of inclusivity in political decision-making. This paradigm shift inspired subsequent reforms, including Edward I's Model Parliament of 1295, which formalized the inclusion of knights and burgesses in legislative assemblies. Over time, the principles established during de Montfort's Parliament became integral to England's political evolution. The gradual transition toward a constitutional monarchy and parliamentary democracy owes much to the innovations introduced in 1265. De Montfort's vision of participatory governance resonated across centuries, influencing democratic ideals worldwide. His reforms laid the groundwork for a political culture that values accountability, transparency, and representation, fostering a legacy that extends far beyond medieval England. The adaptability of de Montfort's reforms underscores their enduring relevance. By prioritizing accountability, shared governance, and representation, the 1265 Parliament laid the groundwork for political systems that continue to evolve in response to societal needs. This adaptability highlights the transformative potential of inclusive governance, reaffirming the timelessness of de Montfort's vision. The principles of fairness and representation he championed remain central to contemporary debates on governance and reform. Simon de Montfort, a controversial figure. Simon de Montfort's legacy remains a subject of debate. To some, he is a visionary reformer and a champion of democratic principles. To others, he is a self-serving opportunist who used the rhetoric of reform to advance his personal ambitions. Regardless of perspective, his influence on political history is undeniable. De Montfort's leadership style reflected a complex interplay of pragmatism and idealism. While his ability to unite diverse social groups underscored his political skill, his authoritarian tendencies and reliance on military force revealed the tensions inherent in his approach. This duality makes him a compelling and multifaceted historical figure. The contradictions in his legacy highlight the challenges of balancing visionary leadership with practical governance, offering valuable lessons for modern political leaders. The debates surrounding de Montfort's legacy illuminate the broader challenges of reform movements. His successes and failures offer valuable insights into the complexities of effecting meaningful change, particularly in the face of entrenched opposition. As such, his story serves as both an inspiration and a cautionary tale for those seeking to transform governance. His life and actions provide a lens through which to explore the enduring struggle between progressive ideals and the realities of power. Broader implications. The 1265 Parliament was part of a broader movement toward shared governance in medieval Europe. Similar developments, such as the Cortes in Spain and the Estates General in France, reflected a growing recognition of the need for representation in decision-making. These movements underscored the universal quest for accountability and fairness in governance. Within England, de Montfort's Parliament stands alongside the Magna Carta, 1215, and the Glorious Revolution, 1688, as key milestones in the constitutional development of governance. Each of these events represented a step toward limiting absolute power and promoting the rule of law. The interconnectedness of these milestones underscores the cumulative nature of progress in political systems. Together, they illustrate the gradual but persistent advancement of governance structures that prioritize inclusivity and equity. De Montfort's Parliament exemplifies the enduring tension between authority and representation, a dynamic central to governance even today. By including commoners and emphasizing accountability, the 1265 Parliament established guiding principles that continue to shape the quest for equitable governance worldwide. These principles serve as a reminder that the struggle for fair representation is both timeless and universal, bridging the past and present. Conclusion. Simon de Montfort's 1265 Parliament redefined the relationship between rulers and the governed, introducing concepts that became cornerstones of democratic governance. Although de Montfort's life ended in defeat, his legacy endures as a testament to the enduring struggle for accountability, inclusivity, and justice in governance. As modern societies grapple with questions of representation and equity, the lessons of Simon de Montfort's Parliament remain profoundly relevant. His bold experiment in governance serves as both an inspiration and a reminder of the challenges inherent in balancing power and representation. Far from being a historical footnote, the 1265 Parliament stands as a milestone in the ongoing journey toward more inclusive and just systems of governance. De Montfort's achievements underscore the transformative potential of inclusive governance. By challenging established norms and embracing innovative approaches, his legacy offers a blueprint for progress. The 1265 Parliament is not only a historical milestone but also a source of enduring inspiration for the pursuit of justice and representation in political systems worldwide. His vision of governance continues to inspire efforts to create a world where power is balanced by accountability and authority is tempered by representation. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious. King Henry III of England. Personal rule, 1234 to 1258. King Henry III began his personal rule in 1234, following the dismissal of his regent, Hubert de Burgh. This period marked a significant shift in governance as Henry took direct control of the administration. Inspired by his reverence for Edward the Confessor, Henry sought to consolidate royal authority and introduce reforms that reflected his vision of centralized governance. However, his reign was consistently marked by financial difficulties and growing tensions with the barons, who resisted his reliance on foreign advisors and questioned his ability to manage the kingdom's resources effectively. Henry's personal rule saw repeated efforts to strengthen the crown's control over justice and administration. He emphasized the importance of royal authority in legal matters, aiming to bring a sense of order and stability to the realm. However, these initiatives often conflicted with the interests of the powerful baronial class, who resented the centralization of power and the king's perceived favoritism towards his inner circle. The situation culminated in 1258 with the imposition of the Provisions of Oxford, a set of reforms forced upon Henry by the barons. These provisions severely curtailed his authority, establishing a council of nobles to oversee the administration and effectively limiting the king's autonomy. This struggle between royal prerogative and baronial power exemplified the tensions that would characterize much of Henry's reign. Beyond administrative reform, Henry's personal rule was marked by a deep engagement with religious and cultural projects. He oversaw the rebuilding of Westminster Abbey in the Gothic style, transforming it into a lasting symbol of both his piety and his vision for the monarchy. The project reflected Henry's devotion to Edward the Confessor and his desire to associate his reign with the ideals of sanctity and continuity. These endeavors, however, often diverted resources from pressing political and military needs, exacerbating the financial pressures on the crown. Henry's court also became a center of artistic and architectural innovation, reflecting his tastes and ambitions. The abbey's design and construction were unprecedented in England at the time, incorporating elements borrowed from French Gothic cathedrals. By engaging skilled craftsmen and artists from across Europe, Henry set a new standard for royal patronage. This cultural legacy, while significant, further drained royal coffers and added to the perception of a king more focused on grandeur than governance. Henry's relationship with the church also played a crucial role in his reign. His patronage of religious institutions went beyond Westminster Abbey, extending to numerous monasteries and churches throughout England. He worked to strengthen ties with the papacy, often seeking its support to legitimize his policies. However, this close association with the church sometimes alienated secular factions, who viewed his reliance on papal authority as a weakness. Henry also used religious ceremonies and iconography to solidify his authority, reinforcing the idea of divine kingship as a central aspect of his rule. These religious undertakings also served as a means of unifying his subjects under a shared cultural and spiritual heritage. Henry's attempts to implement these policies often met resistance from the barons, who sought to curb his influence. This tug-of-war between the monarchy and the barons reflected broader questions about the nature of governance, authority, and accountability in medieval England. Marriage. In 1236, Henry married Eleanor of Provence, a union that had profound political and cultural implications. Eleanor was renowned for her intelligence, charm, and political acumen, and her marriage to Henry brought a new dynamic to the English court. She arrived with a retinue of Provençal relatives who quickly became influential figures in the administration. This marriage strengthened England's ties with the Provence region and bolstered its position in European diplomacy. Eleanor's influence extended beyond the court, shaping cultural and intellectual trends that enriched the kingdom. Eleanor's relatives, however, were a source of considerable friction. Henry's decision to grant them prestigious positions and lands caused resentment among the English nobility, who viewed this foreign influence as a threat to their own power and privileges. Over time, this tension fueled broader dissatisfaction with Henry's governance, contributing to the baronial revolt that would later challenge his reign. Despite these challenges, Eleanor played an essential role as a political advisor and partner, exerting considerable influence over the king's decisions. Her support was instrumental in navigating the complex political landscape of the period, though her prominence also made her a target for criticism. Eleanor's cultural patronage was another lasting contribution to Henry's reign. She championed literature, music, and art, bringing elements of Provençal sophistication to the English court. Her encouragement of courtly poetry and chivalric ideals helped shape the cultural identity of the period, creating a legacy that extended beyond politics. Despite the challenges posed by her family's influence, Eleanor's contributions to the cultural and intellectual life of England were substantial. Eleanor also acted as a mediator during periods of political unrest, using her diplomatic skills to diffuse tensions between the crown and rebellious factions. Her role in the royal household extended to managing alliances and securing the loyalty of key nobles, ensuring that the monarchy retained a semblance of stability during tumultuous times. Additionally, she became a patron of religious reform and education, founding charitable institutions that addressed societal inequalities and enhanced the royal family's image. Eleanor's role as a queen consort went beyond ceremonial duties, as she actively shaped policy and contributed to the cultural and political development of the realm. Eleanor's influence also extended into fostering connections with other European courts, forging alliances that strengthened England's position in continental affairs. Her ability to navigate the intricacies of diplomacy complemented Henry's aspirations, even as their joint efforts often met with mixed results due to the internal challenges facing the crown. Poitou and the Lusignans. Henry's close relationship with the Lusignan family, his maternal relatives from Poitou, was another defining feature of his reign. The Lusignans were known for their ambition and sought to capitalize on their connection to the English king to amass wealth and influence. Henry's patronage of the Lusignans included granting them high-ranking positions, lucrative estates, and significant military responsibilities. This favoritism, however, deeply alienated the English barons, who perceived the Lusignans as corrupt and self-serving. The Lusignans' involvement in Henry's military campaigns, particularly in Poitou, was emblematic of the broader struggles of his reign. Henry's attempts to regain lost territories in France, including the ancestral lands of the Angevin kings, were largely unsuccessful. These campaigns placed a significant financial strain on the crown, further exacerbating tensions with the barons. The failure to achieve meaningful victories in Poitou underscored the limitations of Henry's military strategy and weakened his position both at home and abroad. This failure also highlighted the challenges of maintaining loyalty among the nobility, as dissatisfaction with the Lusignan influence eroded support for the king's broader policies. The impact of the Lusignans extended beyond military matters. Their involvement in the administration of the realm caused significant friction with English officials, who viewed them as interlopers. The tensions between the Lusignans and other factions within the court created a climate of instability and mistrust, further complicating Henry's efforts to govern effectively. The resentment towards the Lusignans became a rallying point for opposition to the king, uniting disparate groups in their criticism of his policies. Despite these tensions, Henry remained steadfast in his support for the Lusignans, believing their loyalty was essential to his continental ambitions. This unwavering favoritism, however, blinded him to the broader implications of their unpopularity, contributing to the erosion of his authority. Over time, this relationship became emblematic of Henry's inability to balance personal loyalty with broader political pragmatism, a theme that recurred throughout his reign. The Lusignans' influence also serves as a case study in the complexities of medieval court politics, where personal relationships often dictated the course of governance. Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. Henry III's dealings with Scotland, Wales, and Ireland reflected the complexities of maintaining control over a fragmented kingdom. In Scotland, Henry pursued a policy of diplomacy and alliance building. He arranged the marriage of his daughter Margaret to Alexander III of Scotland, fostering a period of relative stability and cooperation between the two kingdoms. These diplomatic efforts helped to secure peace on England's northern border, though tensions occasionally resurfaced due to competing territorial claims and political rivalries. In Wales, however, Henry faced persistent resistance from the native princes, particularly Llywelyn ap Gruffydd. Despite numerous campaigns, Henry struggled to assert his authority over the region. His efforts often resulted in temporary truces rather than lasting peace, as the Welsh rulers continually sought to challenge English dominance. The Treaty of Montgomery in 1267, reached after Henry's reign, eventually formalized some of these territorial disputes, but his efforts during his lifetime were marked by frustration and limited success. The enduring conflict in Wales underscored the difficulty of integrating the region into the English kingdom, as cultural and political differences fueled ongoing resistance. Ireland presented its own challenges. The Anglo-Norman lords who controlled much of the territory operated with significant autonomy, often resisting efforts by the Crown to reassert authority. Henry's attempts to bring Ireland more firmly under royal control were hampered by a lack of resources and the logistical difficulties of governing from across the Irish Sea. Despite his efforts, the region remained largely dominated by semi-independent lords who prioritized their local interests over allegiance to the English king. The fragmented nature of Irish governance highlighted the limits of royal power in peripheral territories, as well as the Crown's reliance on local elites to maintain order. Henry's policies in these regions reflected a broader pattern of reactive governance, as he often struggled to impose his will in the face of entrenched local interests. His inability to fully integrate these territories into the English kingdom revealed the limitations of centralized authority during the medieval period. Additionally, these struggles demonstrated the enduring cultural and political diversity of the British Isles, which remained a significant challenge for successive monarchs. These conflicts also underscored the importance of regional identity and autonomy in shaping the political landscape of medieval Britain. European strategy. Henry III's ambitions extended beyond the British Isles, as he sought to restore the Angevin Empire and elevate England's influence in European affairs. His European strategy was characterized by a combination of military campaigns, dynastic marriages, and diplomatic negotiations. Henry's most notable efforts focused on reclaiming territories lost to France, particularly Normandy. However, these endeavors met with limited success, as the French monarchy had consolidated its power and resources, leaving England at a disadvantage. Beyond territorial ambitions, Henry sought to position England as a mediator in broader European conflicts. He supported papal initiatives, including the Crusades, and engaged in diplomatic efforts to resolve disputes between rival powers. These initiatives reflected Henry's desire to enhance England's standing within Christendom and to establish himself as a key player on the European stage. However, the financial demands of these efforts often placed a heavy burden on the Crown, leading to increased taxation and growing discontent among his subjects. The strain of balancing domestic governance with international aspirations revealed the inherent challenges of Henry's strategy, as competing priorities frequently undermined his effectiveness. Henry's involvement in European diplomacy also included fostering alliances through marriage. The union of his daughter Beatrice with John of Brittany and his son Edward with Eleanor of Castile were strategic moves to enhance England's influence on the continent. These alliances, while beneficial in some respects, further stretched the kingdom's resources and highlighted the difficulty of maintaining a balance between domestic needs and international ambitions. Henry also invested heavily in supporting the papacy's broader agenda, believing that a strong relationship with Rome would bolster his position as a Christian monarch. However, this alignment often placed England in the crosshairs of continental rivalries, further complicating Henry's efforts to secure peace and stability. His reliance on papal support sometimes alienated his subjects, who viewed these entanglements as detracting from England's immediate priorities. These challenges highlighted the interconnectedness of medieval Europe, where domestic policies were often shaped by international pressures. The Sicilian business. One of the most controversial episodes of Henry III's reign was his involvement in the Sicilian business. In the 1250s, Pope Innocent IV offered the Sicilian crown to Henry's younger son, Edmund, as part of a papal strategy to counter the Hohenstaufen dynasty. Henry eagerly accepted the offer, viewing it as an opportunity to expand his family's influence and secure a prestigious European title. The campaign to claim Sicily, however, proved to be a disastrous venture. The financial and political costs were immense, as Henry imposed heavy taxes and borrowed extensively to fund the endeavor. These measures provoked widespread anger among the barons and the broader population, who saw the Sicilian project as an extravagant and misguided pursuit. Ultimately, the campaign failed, leaving England with significant debts and further undermining Henry's credibility as a ruler. The debacle contributed to the growing baronial opposition that culminated in the Second Barons' War. This episode illustrated the risks of overextending royal ambitions, as the pursuit of prestige came at the expense of domestic stability. The failure of the Sicilian venture also strained Henry's relationship with the papacy, as he struggled to meet the financial commitments he had made. The papal demands for repayment added to the kingdom's fiscal challenges, creating a cycle of debt and discontent that further weakened Henry's position. This episode served as a cautionary tale of the dangers of overreaching in pursuit of dynastic glory. It also underscored the limitations of Henry's leadership, as he failed to anticipate the long-term consequences of his decisions. The Sicilian venture remains a significant example of the interplay between personal ambition and political reality in medieval Europe. Later reign, 1258 to 1272. The latter years of King Henry III's reign were defined by an unprecedented level of political upheaval and financial instability. Facing persistent challenges from an increasingly disillusioned baronial class, Henry struggled to maintain control over a kingdom burdened by heavy taxation and mounting public dissatisfaction. The introduction of the Provisions of Oxford in 1258 marked a significant turning point, representing a concerted effort by the barons to limit royal power and establish a more participatory model of governance. This period of reform reflected broader tensions within medieval England, between the ideals of traditional monarchy and the emerging demands for accountability and shared authority. Henry's mismanagement of royal finances, compounded by his reliance on foreign advisors and his extensive investment in projects such as the reconstruction of Westminster Abbey, left the kingdom deeply in debt. These issues alienated many of his most powerful subjects, creating a political environment ripe for conflict. While Henry's vision for the monarchy was grand, focused on elevating its cultural and spiritual stature, his inability to address the immediate grievances of his subjects weakened his position and paved the way for a prolonged crisis. By the late 1250s, England was on the brink of revolution, with baronial factions increasingly willing to challenge royal authority. Revolution. The Provisions of Oxford, spearheaded by Simon de Montfort and other influential barons, represented a revolutionary attempt to redefine the balance of power within the kingdom. By mandating the creation of a council of 15 barons to oversee royal administration, the provisions sought to curtail the king's unilateral authority and establish a system of governance rooted in shared decision-making. This marked a significant departure from the traditional model of divine right kingship, challenging long-held assumptions about the nature of monarchy. Implementing these reforms, however, proved challenging. Internal divisions within the baronial movement, coupled with resistance from royalists loyal to Henry, created a volatile and fragmented political landscape. Although the provisions initially succeeded in limiting royal prerogative, their eventual repeal underscored the difficulty of institutionalizing such changes in a feudal society where power was deeply entrenched among competing elites. Despite their short-lived implementation, the Provisions of Oxford left an enduring legacy. They established a precedent for future constitutional reforms and underscored the growing demand for accountability and inclusivity in governance. This revolutionary moment reflected the evolving political consciousness of the time, laying the groundwork for the eventual emergence of parliamentary democracy. Crisis. The tension between Henry III and the barons reached a breaking point as the king sought to annul the provisions of Oxford and reassert his authority. This struggle for control exposed deep divisions within the kingdom, as rival factions vied for supremacy. Henry's attempts to rally support among loyalists were met with fierce resistance, further polarizing the political landscape and heightening the risk of open conflict. The crisis came to a head in 1264 with the outbreak of the Second Barons' War. Simon de Montfort emerged as the leader of the baronial faction, orchestrating a rebellion that culminated in the Battle of Lewes. This pivotal clash resulted in a decisive victory for de Montfort, who captured both Henry and his son, Edward. With the king effectively deposed, de Montfort assumed control of the government, initiating a brief but transformative period of baronial rule. Under de Montfort's leadership, significant reforms were enacted, including the convening of a parliament in 1265 that incorporated representatives from towns and boroughs. This marked a groundbreaking expansion of political participation, reflecting the growing influence of urban and mercantile interests. However, de Montfort's regime faced considerable challenges, including internal discord and external pressures, which ultimately led to its downfall. In 1265, Prince Edward, the future Edward I, escaped captivity and rallied royalist forces, leading to the decisive Battle of Evesham. Edward's victory at Evesham marked a turning point, as de Montfort was killed and the baronial rebellion was effectively crushed. The aftermath of the war saw the restoration of the monarchy, but the underlying tensions that had fueled the conflict remained unresolved. In an effort to promote reconciliation, Henry's government issued the Dictum of Kenilworth in 1266, offering terms of pardon and allowing rebels to redeem confiscated lands through monetary payments. This pragmatic approach facilitated a degree of stability, but the war's legacy continued to influence the evolution of governance in England. The Second Barons' War highlighted the limitations of absolute monarchy and emphasized the necessity of compromise in governance. It represented a pivotal moment in the development of English constitutionalism, illustrating the enduring tension between royal prerogative and the push for shared authority. Reconciliation and reconstruction. In the aftermath of the Second Barons' War, Henry III faced the monumental task of rebuilding a fractured kingdom. The conflict had left deep scars, with widespread destruction and lingering animosities threatening the stability of the realm. Henry's efforts to promote reconciliation focused on restoring order and mending relationships with former adversaries. The Dictum of Kenilworth played a central role in this process, offering a framework for reintegration and restitution. By allowing rebels to reclaim confiscated lands through fines, the dictum struck a balance between maintaining royal authority and addressing baronial grievances. This approach reflected Henry's recognition of the need for compromise to achieve lasting peace. In addition to political reconciliation, Henry prioritized administrative and diplomatic reforms to strengthen the monarchy's position. He worked to rebuild alliances with influential nobles and implemented measures to enhance the kingdom's fiscal and legal systems. These initiatives laid the foundation for a more stable and centralized government, which would be further developed during the reign of his son, Edward I. Death. Henry III died on November 16, 1272, at the age of 65. His death marked the end of an era, as his reign spanned over 50 years, making him one of England's longest-serving monarchs. He was interred in Westminster Abbey, a site closely associated with his architectural and cultural legacy. At the time of his death, England was gradually emerging from the turmoil of his reign. His son and successor, Edward I, embarked on a transformative period of governance that built upon the foundations laid by Henry. While Henry's reign was often criticized for its shortcomings, his contributions to England's cultural and constitutional development remain significant. Historiography. The historiography of Henry III's reign has evolved significantly over time. Early chroniclers often portrayed him as a weak and ineffective ruler, emphasizing his reliance on foreign advisors and his inability to manage the kingdom's finances. These accounts tended to focus on the dramatic events of his reign, such as the baronial revolts and the Second Barons' War, to underscore his perceived failures. Modern historians, however, have taken a more nuanced approach. While acknowledging his limitations, they have also highlighted Henry's cultural and religious achievements, particularly his patronage of the arts and the rebuilding of Westminster Abbey. Scholars recognize the constitutional developments of his reign as pivotal moments in the evolution of governance, providing a foundation for the emergence of parliamentary democracy. Henry's reign is now understood as a transitional period, marked by profound challenges and lasting contributions. His struggles with reform and governance offer valuable insights into the complexities of medieval kingship and the interplay between power, authority, and accountability. Popular culture. Although King Henry III is not as prominent in popular culture as some of his predecessors or successors, his reign has inspired various depictions in literature, art, and historical narratives. The themes of political conflict, loyalty, and governance that defined his rule continue to resonate in modern storytelling. Simon de Montfort often overshadows Henry in portrayals of this period, with his dramatic rise and fall capturing the imagination of writers and historians. De Montfort's role in parliamentary development and his leadership of the baronial movement make him a compelling figure. However, Henry's struggles and achievements remain integral to understanding the broader context of medieval England. Issue: Henry III and Eleanor of Provence had a large and influential family, whose members played pivotal roles in shaping the political and dynastic landscape of medieval Europe. Their eldest son, Edward I, succeeded Henry and became one of England's most notable monarchs, known for his military campaigns and administrative reforms. The marriage alliances forged by Henry's children strengthened England's ties with other European powers, enhancing its diplomatic and strategic position. These alliances contributed to the interconnected web of European royal families, influencing the continent's political dynamics for generations. The legacy of Henry's issue underscores the importance of dynastic politics in shaping governance and diplomacy during the medieval period. Conclusion. King Henry III's reign was a period of ambition, conflict, and transformation. His efforts to centralize authority, strengthen England's presence in Europe, and secure dynastic legacies were often thwarted by financial constraints and opposition from the barons. Despite his aspirations, Henry's reign ended with his authority significantly diminished, paving the way for constitutional changes that would shape the future of the English monarchy. His legacy, while marked by controversy, remains a pivotal chapter in the history of medieval England, reflecting the challenges of governance and the evolving relationship between the crown and its subjects. Henry's reign offers valuable insights into the complexities of medieval politics, as well as the enduring tensions between ambition and practicality in the exercise of power. Through his failures and occasional successes, Henry III's story serves as a reminder of the delicate balance required to govern effectively in a period of profound change. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious.